Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics. I'm Ron Egberto Willies, host. Thank you so kindly for being at a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. It is important. Beforehand, you know what? I want to go ahead and get started right away. Why do I want to get started right away? Because we have a very, very, very full show. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about what the show is going to be about as I cue some of this stuff up right now. Look, let me go ahead and just read that thing and then we'll move on from there. The title of the show today is Medicare for All. Author Joel Segal and North Harris County 7 Warriors discuss Texas elections. You know, when my buddies from, hello Maywood, welcome aboard. Hello Michael Rudnin, welcome aboard. When my folks here in Kingwood and Atascocita and Humble said, hey, Egberto, we needed to get something on air today, I said, all right, man, it's going to be in both places, KPFT and on the internet. Why Paul Flamin from ATL? Welcome aboard. Why? Because you know what, folks, we have to make sure to advertise our local and national whatever it is that they're doing. Anyhow, this show belongs to all of you. Hello, John Green. Welcome aboard. This show belongs to all of you. So if you have stuff that you have critical that you need to get out there, you know you can count on us to get busy, to go ahead and get that going. So anyhow, my folks from the North Harris County 7 Warriors said, hey, we need to get some information on air. So they're going to have the first spot, and the second spot will then go to our buddy Joel Segal who actually wrote Medicare for All. Anyhow, Stephanie Gordon Bailey and John Cotter of North Harris County 7 Warriors discussed their interview schedule of Texas candidates, both local and national. Joel Segal, Medicare for All author, talks universal health care, and much, much more. Joel Segal was instrumental in writing H.R. 676, the original Medicare for All bill under Congressman John Kyers. Joel will talk much more than Medicare for All. We discussed the impact on Obamacare, his passions, and much more. He understands that there is not much time. There's not much time for the progressive movement to save the country from fascism. I know that sounds crass. I know that sounds tough. I know that sounds difficult. That is absolutely true. But we start locally with Stephanie Gordon Bailey and John Cotter appear on Politics Done Right, representing the North Harris County 7 Warriors. We kind of gave that name today when we needed to have a name, so it's subject to change, of course, by the people who run the group. Anyhow, we have the link to their Facebook page that's going to detail the time schedule of the interviews that they're doing, etc., etc., etc. So please, folks, go to our blog post for this show for today. Later on, we'll have a specific blog post for the group itself that ties into all the good work that they are doing. So folks, join us. If you're just joining us, there's one important thing I beg of thee, I ask of thee, I implore of thee. Share, 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 share. I don't see the shares yet, so I'm asking you to do so right now. Please go ahead and share all our programs. The only way we are going to change the body politic, the only way we are going to inform people beyond what's occurring right now in mainstream media, which is, to put it as nice as I can, pathetic, because again, their allegiance is to the corporatocracy. They don't have a choice. They're good people, but they cannot slap the hand that's feeding them. So let's go ahead now, folks, and get completamente busy. Look, just before I did this show, finished preparing the show, I was watching TV. I watched CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, etc. And then on MSNBC, Chuck Todd came on and started to talk about some stuff that Chris Christie was seeing. I guess I missed it when it happened last night or this morning on MSNBC. So what I want to do is I want to play this for you. And I want you guys to understand what's going on here. This is the battle that we ought to fight. This is a battle we are going to be fighting. We hear a lot of times about the right talking about values. We hear a lot about the right talking about the value and the sanctity of life. I want you to listen to this. We'll take it back on the other side.
Let me ask you a larger philosophical question. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie seemed to imply yesterday in an interview that maybe we as Americans, we're going to have to get used to death for a while. We have to stand up for the American way of life.
Of course, everybody wants to save every life they can. But the question is, towards what end ultimately? Are there ways that we can thread the middle here to allow that there are going to be deaths? And they're going to be deaths no matter what. And if we can do things to keep people in the mode of wearing masks, of wearing gloves, of distancing where appropriate, we've got to let some of these folks get back to work, because if we don't, we're going to destroy the American way of life in these families, and it will be years and years before we can recover.
Is that where we're headed? We just have to get used to a higher death toll for a while?
I don't know what Governor Christie's thinking when he says that. Reminds me of some of what we heard from the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, seeming to almost explain away that people are going to die and treating that like a cost of doing business. I think that's unconscionable. We need to save every life we can save. And that's an American value. And that's what all the people are being celebrated. The healthcare workers, the paramedics, the EMTs, they're being celebrated because they went out and saved lives no matter what. So I think the national goal should be to have the strongest possible healthcare system, to actually address the disparities that have been laid bare and make our healthcare system better, more universal, to save every life. That is consistent with our values. It does not have to be inconsistent with an economic recovery. And I get very worried, Chuck, when I hear folks putting the almighty dollar on a pedestal above saving human life. I don't think that's consistent with what the vast majority of Americans believe.
Now, I'm going to say a few things. Those of you that are regulars hear me say it all the times, but I have to repeat it because we get new people over and over and over again. But first of all, it is amazing how the right, they are selective when they're considering the value of life. Chris Christie was about to make a mistake. He said we have to let some of these people go back to work. He was about to say to save our economy, to save the American way of life, we're going to have to make some of these people die. That is what he was really about to say, and that was clear. Now, here's the thing. We can sit down there and start talking about, most people live, most people don't die. The problem is we don't know who dies. We don't know, and not only that, we don't know who dies. What does it say about a society when, to save a particular economic system, you are willing to have people die? That does not have to be. We don't have an economic system. We don't have a system that is designed for people. In other words, we don't design people to fit an economic system. We define an economic system to fit people. I want you to get that in your heads, and please, brothers and sisters, understand the humanity in what I am saying here. You want to have an economic system designed with humanity in mind. In other words, after we decide what is the value of life, around that value of life, we build an economic system that fits that. You don't build an economic system that says, X amount of people will survive. You don't build an economic system that transfers the wealth to the top, which is exactly what we're doing. Check this out. The first thing people ask is, how is that policy going to affect business? That's the wrong question. The question should always be, how is this policy going to affect humanity? And then, how do we adjust business to fit humanity? Now, as it turns out, when they talk about, we don't want to give people UBI, basic income. There is a video going around and it drove me crazy because a lot of friends as well are putting that video out by a very unintellected and a pastor. And the problem I have when pastors get into politics is that because people who listen to pastors believe in faith, and because faith does not require facts, they are able to convince quite a few people to do certain things. But anyhow, here we go. This pastor is out there talking against UBI, Universal Basic Income. This pastor is out there talking about giving away monies to people to survive this pandemic, as opposed to giving it to corporations. Some very insane forms and thought processes coming out of these people on the right. We have Candace Owen, one of the few bloggers out there or one of the many bloggers out there that the right likes to sing on. They're trying to say, go back to work, go back to work. Like I've told many of us, we should talk about this. We should say, okay, we'll go back to work, but for going back to work, let's make sure we have universal health care so that in the effect that we get some sort of an illness, we're taken care of. We do not have to go bankrupt. So the pact between society and business, ensure that all Americans, not based on where they work, but all Americans have health care. And then we'll go back to work, because we know if we are the unlucky few who get really, really, really sick from COVID-19, that we will be taken care of. Also, ensure that if we go to work and get sick, there is sick leave, because we don't want to stay without, because we sacrifice our well-being to work for society. It's amazing. The corporations are always saying, they always say, wait a minute, we take risks. And because we take risks, that is the reason we want that profit. But it's a lie. Our capitalist system take very few risks on the top. When the banks were giving out student loans in those days, you were being paid to give student loans. But guess what? The student loans were backed by the federal government, who said if you didn't pay your student loan, the federal government made the bank whole. The same thing with the Small Business Administration. They loan money to small businesses. They don't pay it back. Why? They get the money back from the federal government. That is not risk. So therefore, why are they making profits? When they get into trouble, when they destroyed our economy by creating credit default swaps. Look it up. Credit default swaps were created, which in the long run, these derivatives were based on derivatives that eventually became circular, and in their circularity caused a complete economic crash. Who made them whole again? You did. The taxpayer did. The government created money. Then they like to come with the argument, you cannot print money at will. We cannot give every American, for the time being, $2,000 a month or something until we recover from this. It's a lie. You cannot have, because inflation would go crazy. Do you want to be like Germany, where you have people going around with buckets and wheelbarrows of cash? That does not happen, because it doesn't follow any economic theory. Neither Keynesian economics, neither MMT, meaning modern monetary theory, the Austrian economic model, no model. You know why? You can only have inflation if there is scarcity. What do we mean by that? If there aren't enough products for me to buy and I have a lot of money chasing products, that is the only way you can have inflation. So at this point in time where we are loaded with product, I mean, the oil companies are busting with product they want to get rid of. We don't want them to cut back to raise prices. Think about it. We have products in galore. We are overstocked with products. The people that I'm more concerned about right now are farmers and ranchers. And why am I concerned about them? Because they require a time-sensitive type of production that can hamper us if they are in trouble. So those are the people that I'm really concerned about right now. The farmers and the primary care workers, the essential workers, if you will. Because they have to continue. Now that is where the concern lies. So folks, I want you to realize several particular issues in these. We have to start using our heads. We have to stop listening to those on the right who pretty much knows not what they speak about. Some of them are willfully ignorant, and that I'm saying that very respectfully, but some of them simply don't get it. And secondly, I want you to realize other things. Right now, there's some ethos in the mind. We don't want to give bailouts to the blue states because they have high taxes. Well, they have high taxes because they help their people. And in the reality, what happens is these blue states are supporting these red states. So when Kentucky talk about, I don't want to live in in New York, and I don't want my tax dollars going to New York. It ain't going to New York anyway, because New York is supporting all these welfare red states. Most red states are welfare states. They take more than they give. They take back much more than they give. They are welfare states. They talk a lot, they produce little. They speak much, they do little. That is what we have to understand out of these different realities. So, folks, please, please, please don't fall into the trap at all. I'm about to start the first video of the day, but I want to give my kudos to Michael Rudnin, Michael Cisak, Lee Grant, Paul Fleming, May Wood, Norman Reynolds, my buddy, Daniel Ledoux, Lawrence Sims, Raynord Blake from YouTube, AVQ from YouTube. Welcome aboard, John Green, Bruce Pollard. If I miss you, forgive me. So anyhow, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started with the first one, and we'll then move on from there. So here we go. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm here with the North Harris County 7 Warriors. You know, we talk about engagement, political engagement, and changing the body politic. Well, you know what? These guys have already changed Harris County, and they intend to change the entire Texas. And with that, they are beginning to do interviews and making sure that you guys make the right choice. So I'm honored to have both John Cotter as well as Stephanie Gordon Bailey. Welcome aboard, guys. John, I understand that you guys, in order to make sure the people that you represent are well informed, that you are starting sort of a debate schedule to make sure all these people are accounted for. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that, John?
You know, one of the things that we wanted to do was host a forum or a debate like normal times where people get together and get to meet the candidates. But obviously with our stay-at-home provisions, we weren't able to do that. So we came up with this new format, and we're going to, during the month of May, on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, host debate and forums with several of the candidates in the July 14th runoff. And we're starting tonight with a local race on the west side of Harris County. It's the Harris County Precinct 3 Commissioners. And our second one this week is Thursday, May 7th, and it's House District 138. So we're starting on a really local scale.
Well, you know, that is interesting, because I believe if we were doing things like this long ago, because, you know, you go ahead and you get those ballots, right? And those ballots are so darn long, and you're looking at it and you don't know what you're voting for. Now, Stephanie, tell me about how can people, first of all, find out how to get in touch with you all, how to get in touch with where to see this?
So it's going to be on Facebook Live. We actually are having the candidates on Zoom, but we're going to broadcast it through Facebook Live on our Facebook page. It's 2020 Candidate Debates is our Facebook page. And you'll be able to stay tuned to that. We're going to start at 7 o'clock on every Tuesday and Thursday. Tonight we have Diana Martinez Alexander and Michael Moore, which are Precinct 3 commissioners. And then we go into our state rep races, which are this weekend, the rest of this week and next week, and then leading up to the Senate race on May 28th. And we wanted to make sure we focused on all the races that are relevant in the county, including the statewide races. So you'll see the calendar or schedule of events and follow the page, and you can go on there and watch our debates. They'll stay broadcast, and stay tuned for the next ones.
Now, you said that is the Facebook page. Repeat it again for me, because, you know, sometimes people are a bit...
Yes, and I need to go slower, I know. It's 2020 Democratic Candidate Debates.
So, John, how long have you guys been doing this? I know you did one earlier where you had an in-person one, a big one, out here in the northwest part of town.
Well, we've all been active for a long time, but late in 2019, we decided to pool our resources with our clubs. And there's 7 of us in the North Harris County area. Our clubs got together to host that first event that you were speaking about earlier this year. And it was to allow everybody in the community to come out and see who was running for the Democratic seat for the Senate race. And we had 11 of the 12 candidates come out to the facility in the Greens Point area.
You know what? It's great seeing that you're actually not only concentrating on the top of the ticket. You know, a lot of times that is what people tend to do, not realizing that being in government, the one that has the most effect on you is the one that's closest to you. Was that an intentional thing, Stephanie, that you guys put together in that regards?
Absolutely. And you couldn't say it any better. The closer it is to you, the more it affects you. And we wanted to make sure that people understood what the local races mean and how they affect you, and that we're making the right decisions to make sure we have the right candidates to run against the Republicans in November.
Am I correct that there are some runoff elections that we should be very concerned about, specifically the Senate? Is that correct?
Yes. The Senate, we need somebody who's going to be able to take out John Cornyn. We do have hashtag Can Cornyn and hashtag Cream Cornyn that we have trending on, trying to trend anyway, on Facebook and Twitter. So please use them. So it's very important that we definitely have the right candidate to go up against him. That includes all of these races. We want to make sure that we're able to unseat these guys. There was an article yesterday that talked about that Texas is a battleground state and it is winnable. We need that to be not only at the national level, but at the local level too.
Now, John, why is Texas winnable? I mean, why should Democrats come out now? I mean, we've been disappointed for so long. Beto was supposed to do it. He missed it by 2.3%. Give me your thoughts as to why this time. Now, personally, I think we're going to turn blue in Texas in the 2020 cycle. Why do you think we're going to turn blue in the 2020 cycle?
Well, I think there's a lot of things moving Texas that direction. Obviously, Beto getting within 2.3%, his opponent in 18, that was a big move in that race. And since that time, the Republicans haven't reached out to the greater demographic in Texas wide, and people are feeling left out. From our side, we've got great candidates. There's more people, the changing demographics. There's just more voters coming out, and people have always said Texas is deep red. We really don't believe that. We just believe that we haven't got enough people out voting, so it's a non-voting state.
That is so true. I mean, they always call Texas a non-vote. It's not a red state. It's a state that doesn't vote, and we're at 50 in all the states in voting. Now, Stephanie, right now we are in sort of this pandemic. And because we have this pandemic, we can't do that touchy, fleshy kind of a campaigning that, we like to do as Democrats. How do we mitigate that? There's something that concerns me, and I don't know if you can help me out here. People like you are engaged, and a lot of folks in the suburbs are well and good and engaged, but a lot of our voters as well live in rural areas. They live in exurbs. They live in the inner cities. What best way, or how do you plan to help those people get the message and see the necessity for them to come out and vote, because this time it's going to matter for them?
Actually, kind of ironic, because when we started planning this, we were going to do it back at the Greenhouse Church where we did the one in January over in the Greenhouse. Yeah. And then this is actually probably plan D that we've had, going through different iterations, or what are we going to do to make this happen? And now looking at it, we are able to find a way to reach people that can't make it. We're finding a way to have it broadcast wider. We're advertising through Facebook. We actually, just so you know, we have tons of clubs and orgs within Harris County that are co-sponsors, and there'll be a list on our Facebook page, so stay tuned for that, as well as some individual donors. And they're making it to where we can boost our posts through Facebook. We're also going to have it shared on YouTube after the fact, so we'll be able to really spread the message widely. And once it's up there, you can keep watching it. In fact, on our page, you'll be able to scroll down and see the debates from January if you're interested, to get an idea of how we do things.
All right, Stephanie, what have I not asked you that you want to go out and tell our audience? And please remember as well to tell them how can they find you again? 2020
Democratic Candidate Debates is our Facebook page. It's a public page, and we have our debate schedule on there. So make sure that you follow, and most importantly, share that page. The more people who share it, the more people we can reach, just like Egberto was just talking about. And it's really, really important. Even though some of these races may not affect you, they affect people you know, and they do affect you overall. Even though you don't get to vote in them, all of them affect every single one of us.
John, most organizations like yours that's doing all this good work require some support. How can people help your group?
Well, the first thing is tune in and watch the debates, because the whole goal of all of this work and effort is to allow people to meet these great candidates, make an educated decision, and have them be fired up and excited about coming out and voting for these candidates. That's the goal. That's the rewarding part. We always like donations to our clubs and the Harris County Democratic Party. We always like donations because that allows us to continue the get out the vote and reach voters and make sure people have this information.
Well, folks, I'll have all the information that both Stephanie and John had in the corresponding blog post for this. I want to thank so kindly you guys for coming on this early on the show, because I tell you, the thing that bring the biggest smile to all of us that are activists, you included, is when we're actually engaged and making that change that we know have to get done. So I want to thank you so kindly. All the information that you gave me here, all the information that you're yet to provide me will be in the blog post for this show. And so thank you for being on Politics Done Right, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alberto.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Now, the next interview is with Joel Segal. Joel Segal worked for John Conyers in the Congress. And I don't know, for those of you who don't know, the kind of original Medicare for All bill was called H.R. 676. He is one of the authors of that particular bill. So I was on a call with him, with Representative Dennis Kucinich and a couple of mayors. I think the mayor from Arizona and Phoenix, and the mayor from, I don't remember where the other mayor was from. And we were sort of on a conference Zoom discussing a whole lot of issues relative to COVID-19. And I said, you know what, let's go ahead and do an interview from Joel and talk about what really needs to be done. For all of those who are listening and watching about this stuff, about going back to work and all of that, we go back to work, or we should say we go back to work when we get health care. We go back to work when we get sick leave. Let's start becoming a humane society. Here we go. Take it on the other side. Welcome to another segment of Politics Done Right. Today I have a special guest for you. I met this special person on it's not a live chat, it's a conference that we had with several mayors, with Dennis Kucinich, Representative Dennis Kucinich, and quite a few others. I was so impressed with him leading the conference. I had to find out who, I know about him because, you know, everybody who knows about Medicare for All, this is a guy you got to know. So when I saw him on the call first, I was a bit shocked, right? But thereafter, it was like, wow, he doesn't look like just that kind of a guy that stands behind the paper as a lawyer and write these policies up. This guy can talk. So I said, man, I need to find this guy. And Joel Segal, thank you so much for accepting this invite to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm healthy and breathing, and I feel like I have a hermano. I got a new brother with Egberto. I'm just honored that our universe has brought us together. You're a wonderful person. I think you're one of the best talk show hosts I've ever seen or heard. I've been on these shows for 30 years, and you're one of the best I've seen.
Well, I mean, how much did I pay you for that again? I appreciate, brother. I appreciate that. But let me just. I'm going to let you talk. I want you to do most of the talking. But before you do most of the talking, I just want to tell the audience who this guy is. Anybody who remembers Representative John Conyers in Congress, anybody remember that he was the author of H.R. 676. When you talk about a bill, you're talking about having to write the particular policies and how it interacts with the different parts of your medical system and society, etc. Well, the person who wrote the bill, the person who put all those little digits together, etc., was El Señor Joel Segal. So Joel, first of all, I want to tell you, I followed 676 for years. I've been preaching 676 for years.
Thank you.
And that was a good piece of work that you had there. And everything that Medicare for All is built on right now has incorporated those tenets that you put into that policy. So thank you for what you brought, my brother.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was lucky. I got to work with a genius named Congressman John Conyers, who was a protege of Martin Luther King. And he hired me and he said, I want you to write a single payer bill. And I said, okay. And but I got to work with the Physicians for a National Health Program.
Great
and
group.
and I had been their representative in Congress as a lobbyist. So I called on them and I said, look, this is our chance to come up with the best gold standard bill that would reflect the best practices of physicians. But I came at it as a patient who grew up uninsured and had so many problems with the healthcare system. I owe about 150,000 in medical bills. So it was drafted in the spirit of the uninsured patient, and then what would a physician want? And I wanted a Medicare, system. How would a Medicare deliver a universal healthcare program? And the two former editors of the New England Journal of Medicine, they helped me too with the final draft, and Harvard Medical School doctors and award-winning economist, and it was really a team effort.
Well, I mean, team effort is one thing, but Amina, you really drove that thing through. What do you think is going to be the faith now? We have Jayapal and Bernie that's trying their level best to continue the mission, continue on the path to get this stuff moved forward. How do you think we're going to get it, especially since the chosen one for the Democratic Party and the one that likely will get elected is Joe Biden, who says Medicare for all is a giveaway?
It's a great question. Well, first of all, I didn't think that Medicare for all was going to see the light of day. I used to joke with my older brother, Larry. I'd say, well, about when I'm 90 years old, maybe they'll take it seriously. But I was stunned that after the passage of the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, and I was one of the lead staffers to help shepherd that bill to passage with several other staffers and members of Congress and grassroots organizations. I was amazed at that Bernie ran on it and Dennis Kucinich ran on it, and I think that the reason why it stood the test of time is A, it's the truth. B, it's so simple to understand, right? A publicly financed, privately delivered healthcare system like Medicare. But Connors and I traveled together for 13 years, almost every weekend, to all 50 states, a few hundred cities, and we built political power in all those states and all those cities because I knew if I left the Hill that this movement would have to live far beyond me. And so we founded a lot of different organizations who ended up raising money, and I'm just so amazed at how the grassroots have done their job. Progressive Democrats of America, the National Nurses Association.
You were actually was a part founder of the Progressive Democrats of America, right?
I was the co-founder, and with Tim Carpenter and several former staffers from the Kucinich campaign. I was their first vice chair.
Right.
Mimi Kennedy was their first chair. I helped raise their money, build their board, kind of come up with this idea called inside outside of strategy, and I knew that they would carry the tradition on. A guy named Dr. Bill, they call him, is the one who's been really pushing it so hard for Progressive Democrats of America. But Bernie took it to another level. Elizabeth Warren took it to another level, and now we have to take it to an even higher level if we're going to have an impact both on Biden and the Congress. And I have certain ideas about what we have to do to get it past the finish line. And
before you give those ideas, because I think to move forward, you have to know the mistakes that you've made. And you were very responsible, part responsible when to shepherd the Affordable Care Act through Congress. Right now, the Democrats have been able to sort of put the blame of the deficiencies of our healthcare system on things Republicans didn't want to do. But I want it to be made clear from the author of 8676 and someone who also shepherded the Obamacare. I want Americans to know, and specifically Democrats, that some of the enemies of progress was themselves Democrats, because otherwise the Obamacare product would have been a much better bill. Why don't you explain some of that?
Yeah, I want to be perfectly candid about what happened. When Senator Baucus took 676 off the table during the Obamacare deliberations, I immediately had a meeting with about 70 leaders from around the country who flew into D.C. to meet in John Conyers' Judiciary Committee room. And I was like, let's see if we can do a Medicare public option. We were ready to go. We were ready to get organized. Two members of the Progressive Caucus, their staffers, just didn't feel like the public option was going to be a priority, and they did not move the public option that far. And then Senator Lieberman, who I fondly call him the senator from Etna,
Right.
he said, I'm taking the public option off the table, the so-called public option. And I was pretty close to him, and I didn't understand why would he do that, because without a public option, there's no competition with the insurance companies, right, to lower their rates and provide better coverage, et cetera.
Right. The public option presents the baseline.
Yeah, I mean, now half the bill of Obamacare is Medicaid. Now, a lot of people don't know that, but Medicaid is a single payer program.
Right.
It covers 100% of your bill. And the Medicare plus 10 reimbursement rate was in the first bill so that it would be a healthy reimbursement rate, so doctors wouldn't say, we're not going to take you because you're on Medicaid. And I remember when Congressman Waxman was talking to a bunch of us at a conference about healthcare, he said, now, for those of you who are for single payer, we have a Medicaid. And I remember saying to myself, wow, this is really cool. I didn't think he was going to do that. And that was because of the single payer HR 67 movement. In terms of the mistakes made, I would say lessons learned would be, if you're going to ever consider passing Medicare for all single payer, there's going to have to be a much larger movement. There's not a single payer full-time office in DC. There's not a single payer PAC. There's not full-time organizers who are really being paid to do this. And until that happens, it's going to be a long, long way to get there. But I'm convinced we can get there because our healthcare system is falling apart in front of our very eyes. 30 million people about to be uninsured because of COVID-19.
Now, I'm glad that you said that, because when we talk about we are going to have to mobilize, I've been telling my audience for quite a while now that we have to really be optimal in the way we use the next 2 to 3 months, because everybody is going to be in there challenging, because everybody knows that we're going into some sort of depression. And how we get out of it, how we are designed out of it, is whoever has the ears of those politicians who are going to pass the policies that get us out. Now, normally, as happened in 2008, the policies were corporate-centric. We got the pittances. Likewise, again, if we're careful, the same thing will occur again. My expectation with having people like you in the fold, that we are actually going to do exactly what you just said, and that is mobilization has got to begin. You're talking about having an office in Washington, D.C. Yeah, you may have an office in Washington, D.C., but in my humble opinion, we also have to be virtualized around the country for a new education process. Let me ask you a question this way.
Absolutely.
And this
right.
is simple, right? I've always wondered why basic math never applies to healthcare if it wasn't just a political issue. In other words, when did having additional expenses reduce the cost of something, when single payer removes a large percentage of those expenses, not only on the side of not only on the side of the corporations or the people, but on the side of the doctors?
Well, first of all, what single payer does, and you can see this in Europe, and I'd say the best example is Taiwan. Taiwan literally has 676. I mean,
right.
The same doctors who helped me draft 676 are the same doctors who helped draft the Taiwan plan. And what single payer does is it keeps the cost curve of medical care flat. Right now, it goes up exponentially every year because it's basically a for-profit, right, corporation, both the insurance companies, hospitals, long-term care centers. It's often stockholder driven and owned. So there's no way for there to be cost controls. And until you have a Medicare for all single payer system, the costs are going to go up trillions of dollars. Whenever critics say, oh, single payer is going to cost $30 to $40 trillion, I'm like, nope, the current system is going to cost $30 to $40 trillion because there's no global budgeting of the hospitals. There's no way that the government can negotiate down prescription drugs. I'll give you an example of Egberto of insane healthcare cost. A MRI machine cost $1 million to buy and $600,000 to install. Now, $2 million? $2 million? That's the cost of one of Donald Trump's yachts.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense. And but what really hurts is the people who were still shut out of the healthcare system because they didn't expand Medicaid in my state in 14 states. About 1,700 people died last year because of that. And so when you need a federal system, because these Republican governors are going to always push back and say, we don't want that federal program and it's going to cost too much. None of that is true. All that being said, why not replicate what works in every other country and get everybody covered and save hundreds of billions of dollars a year? And a universal system, you show your card to any doctor you want, any hospital you want, any provider you want. You scan your card. It shows your medical background. You leave with no copays, no deductibles, no cost sharing, no bills, no bill collectors calling you every second like they do me, no bills in the mail. We don't need that system. That's the old system. We need a new system.
Absolutely. So, well, I mean, I think that is something that we ought to work for. I think that is a passion of many of us. Like I said, from Occupy Wall Street, where we had the real genesis of starting of this type of program in here, to now, I think it is time. I think more than ever, Americans are going to see that employer-based insurance makes absolutely no sense, because as the 30 million have lost their jobs, the 15 million or so of those that were lucky enough to have insurance will join the family of the uninsured. And I think that is going to make a big difference. Well, look, we've discussed Medicare for All, which is, I think, something most people are interested. But I want to take you a little bit beyond that, because Medicare for All is just one segment of our economy. I think what we need is a complete economic restructure where we are human-centric as opposed to corporate-centric. I've always told people many times, when you ask, whenever we put out policy, you're a policy wonk that can speak. I love that. A policy wonk that can speak and appeal to people, and people can understand them. That's great. Let me
play the bass guitar.
Go ahead. And play it. Oh, let me tell you guys, this guy sent me a cut on this is funkadelic, man.
That's right. I played with one of the Parliament Funkadelics on that record you had.
I know that's what I said. Yeah, you know. So, but I mean, a hell of a bass player, guys. A hell of a bass player. Now, but we have to start having a paradigm shift in the way we think. Whenever you write a policy, right? Whenever Joel Segal write a policy, the first thing the business guys ask, or many politicians ask, is, how is that going to affect business? In Spanish, we say, eso está trastornado, which means that's like reverse, crazy. Every policy that you pass, the very first thing you should ask is, how does it affect humanity? How does it affect the citizens of this country?
Exactly.
Right? And after you ask that, you say, how do we fit the corporation into that modal? My question to you, Brother Segal, is how best do we educate Americans to stop thinking how the Powell Manifesto told them to think, to ask about business first and not ask about you, Joel, you, Peter, you, Paul, you, Anna, first?
I love this interview, man. You're really asking questions that are so salient and rarely asked, you know, so thank you for this question. First of all, everyone should read the economist Paul Krugman.
I love him.
He wrote a book. Oh, he's the best. New York Times economist, but he wrote a book called End This Depression Now. The premise of the book is that America can literally borrow in an unlimited fashion to a point, and then, you know, we have to pay for things. But when our gross domestic product is $16 trillion, so it's up there with China. And when you're the richest country in the world, it's a mythology. He calls it intellectual confusion. You can't be the poorest country. No, You can't be the wealthiest country in the world and then be the poorest country in the world at the same time. That makes no sense. So if we're going to spend $780 billion on the military and when we're not in a Cold War, and then give trillions of dollars of tax cuts to the super rich, well, what would happen if we, didn't have those tax cuts on the super rich who don't need them, and we didn't have all that money spent on the military, and we did, modest, progressive taxes on the very wealthy? We would have the Rolls Royce or Bentley of healthcare. So what you have to do when someone says, well, we can't afford it, you have to literally show them the numbers. We costed out 676 when we first introduced it. And we showed, here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how much a family's going to pay. Here's how much the business is going to pay and the individual, so we could answer that question. And then lastly, you really have to be able to show the American people, look, this is how much this is going to cost. We knew Obamacare was $780 billion. They showed how to pay for it. This is a mistake that my brother Bernie Sanders has made. He has to go to Lewin and Associates or the Urban Institute or these other think tanks and really cost it out and show the savings and the expenditure. If we don't do that, then the right wing and the corporate Democrats will say we can't afford it, which is very easy to say that because then you don't have to do any other further research. The problem is the media, and I'm glad that you're a progressive media, but basically the corporate media structure, instead of asking economists who know about single payer and bringing them on their shows, they go right along with that narrative because it sells and it gets corporate sponsors. Often the insurance companies and the drug companies, I think MSNBC is fantastic and CNN, but look at their commercials. Who's sponsoring these media moguls? It's the corporate 1%. So we need alternative media like you, Egberto. I hope that the idea that you've promulgated, which is to have a kind of a progressive media that's internet, radio, articles, blogs, that's what we need to do so we don't have to depend on MSNBC and CNN. I think you're a genius, and I'm going to do everything I can to support your vision.
I
Otherwise,
appreciate.
we can't get our message out. How do we get our message out?
That is everything. I talk to people. I live in red district in Texas here, and all my friends in Starbucks are conservatives. And the thing about it is, we were able to have a conversation. And the thing about it is, they are convincible. I remember the book that was written. I don't remember the name. What's happened to those folks in Kansas or that kind of a stuff, right? I don't. You know which book I'm talking about.
I remember that book. Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand what the book is saying, but there's a piece of the book that I think where I want to go. I think when you give people a certain level of respect, they start to listen. And many a times what we've done, I'm not talking about you, Joel, or others, because you're plain spoken in the way you get things across. And like I said, you communicate. But there are too many of us that when we are doing that communication, we're doing it from a level, first of all, looking at a person and saying, you're stupid, now listen. And what I try to do is I try to listen first to see how they've gotten there. And after I've seen, and it takes more time, granted. But hell, we fail so many times. If we had taken some time, maybe, I'm talking to a sect of us now, not all of us, taking some time, maybe we would have gotten that delta taken care of so that we could get that little bit more that we needed to get many of the policies that we want come across. Because look at progressive policies. I went to Netroots 2015, and Elizabeth Warren was there. Elizabeth Warren gave a speech that brought the House down. Elizabeth Warren went to the stats and pointed out that if you were to forget about Democrats and Republicans and spoke to all Americans and asked them what they wanted, the policies that you write, Joel, the policies that you write are the policies Americans want.
Yes, I write from the experience of someone who was, I grew up in an upper middle class family. My father died when I was 14. I had to go to work at 15. I experienced homelessness. I experienced being kicked out of hospitals. I experienced not having food and going to the social services and getting food stamps because I have I have a health challenge called sleep apnea, and I had several surgeries because I couldn't breathe at night, and it was life-threatening. So I write bills, and I speak from the perspective of someone who has suffered a lot, but I was also very fortunate because there were many years where I did not suffer. So I can actually be very thankful about that. And when I launched the universal healthcare movement, was with Bernie Sanders and Barney Frank and about 1,000 people, mainly of color. I organized uninsured people for 2 years on the internet. That's how I got into Congress. And I think the key to talking to people is with respect and what John Connors called love and logic. I'm from North Carolina. I grew up in the South. My friends were also very conservative. And I had to learn to speak the language of a shoe salesman. My father was a shoe salesman. I grew up with all these shoe salesmen. And I've learned that you can't talk over people. You got to answer their questions. You got to listen. Like as a bass player, I got to listen to other musicians in order to play that groove with the drummer. You got to give people respect and answer their questions. And as Bootsy Collins says, one of my favorite bass players, you can't fake the funk or your nose will grow. He called it the Pinocchio theory. You can't fake being sincere. You can't fake knowing the policy or your nose will grow. People, you look like a liar. But people, if they want to advocate for single payer, you've got to be able to explain single payer and know the policy. A lot of people still have never read the bill, HR 676.
I know.
I wrote it. It's only 26 pages. I would tell people, read the bill. I wrote it so a 12th grader could understand it. I wrote it that way on purpose. I told the drafters on the Hill, I want you to write it so it's simple so anyone can understand it. And when Conyers first saw the bill, he he got a little upset and he goes, why is this bill so thin? I said, because the Canadian healthcare system, about 16 pages. But if you're not happy with it, I will talk to the former editors of the New England Journal of Medicine, medical school. He said, oh, okay. I'm okay with it then. Well, it turned out I was right. Shorter the better. Healthcare is not that hard.
No.
It's not hard. You've got to go to a doctor or a hospital or get your drugs or get your medical equipment. They got to get paid. How hard is that? Just have the government pay for it and then get rid of the middleman, the insurance companies.
You know, that is so smart of that statement is what people don't get. You know, the reason we put complexity into healthcare is so that we could have skimmers, so that we could have people who profit undeservedly from the system. If it's simple, there's no real way to profit. But you know what? We don't mind profit. We don't mind the private corporations doing their thing. The thing about it is there are certain parts of society that belongs in the commons. There are certain parts of society that shouldn't be for profit, because profit means, Joel, your humanity depends on whether my shareholder is going to get that profit or not. And you know what? The fiduciary responsibility of the corporate executive is to the shareholder, not to the worker, not to the patient. That's their fiduciary responsibility. You're a lawyer, you know that.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, Mr. Connors used to say, you know, the reason why the current system doesn't work, Joel, for healthcare? I'd say, why? Because it's run like a business, and you can't run healthcare like a business. It's got to be a public commodity. And, you know, the biggest mythology that we're dealing with now is coming from Joe Biden.
Yes.
And Biden will say, to distinguish himself from Bernie Sanders, people love their private insurance. And if we do Medicare for all, I'll veto it. Well, no, sorry. People like their doctor. They don't like their private health insurance. I mean, maybe 0.1% like their private health insurance. And usually these are people with trust funds, gold-plated, plans from the AFL-CIO or the bank. Majority of people cannot stand their health insurance. And I really think there needs to be a poll taken by, AP, UPI poll, where they ask people who are uninsured with health issues like me, do you like your health insurance? They're going to say no. We never hear, I pitched a movie called Sicko to Michael Moore years ago.
And he made it.
In order to, well, boy, did he make it. It's one thing to pitch an idea. It's another thing for it to be a Picasso, but he just did a phenomenal job. And we were losing badly in Congress on Obamacare and single payer. I wanted members of Congress who were basically white and rich, and the staff who were white and rich, to understand the plight of the uninsured. And I knew they didn't understand. And I knew if there was a movie with people in the movie talking about what it's like to be uninsured, we could turn that around. And sure enough, Michael Moore did this phenomenal movie. I was with him the last day of shooting. He's a great guy. And when that movie came out, we showed it on the Hill. We showed it in D.C. And I remember a Secretary of Defense, former Secretary of Defense, looked at me and he goes, I did not know how bad it was. And a friend of mine who works for NBC now, a senior producer, said, Joel, I didn't know how bad it was. And I was like, yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure we did this movie. We need to do an updated movie of Sicko 2, interview people who have private health insurance, interview people who've gotten insurance from Obamacare, interview people who did not get Medicaid, show the system as it is now, which is morally corrupt, morally bankrupt, costly, people still getting turned down even from hospitals. There was a 17-year-old kid who was uninsured, got turned down from a hospital because he was uninsured, and he died in his car of COVID-19.
Yes.
The average bill, Egberto, for a COVID-19 patient is $30,000. Are you going to have a bake sale to pay for that? Or, GoFundMe?
No.
Hell no.
And not only that, we are going to, COVID-19 will be saturating GoFundMe. And the funny thing about it is it's saturating GoFundMe to make a bunch of rich, fat cats a bit richer. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned that about telling the stories, because in our little way here, what I've been doing is probably every couple of weeks or so, we get somebody who comes and tell their story. And it's amazing. I had a woman, her name is Rose Williams, who came and told her story about having breast cancer. And that doctor, because of the insurance company having a strict schedule as to when to do an MRI, in as much as she had a lump, he made her wait, and until it really just got grossed and started to grow out and break the skin. Didn't she get coverage? She survived, but it was all driven by the insurance company that people are supposed to love. Look, Joel, we are coming to the end of this interview. Please tell me something that I haven't asked, something that you want to tell the audience at large. It's yours.
We need a unified progressive movement that'll create a human-centric America. We need a rebirth and a reset where corporations are not king, rich people don't rule us, but govern us, and we, the people, have to take matters in our own hands peacefully, have universal health care, jobs for all, housing for all, 100% clean renewable energy. We got to get rid of poverty. We don't need a prison industrial complex. We don't need homeless people. Let's envision a new America, and let's find people like you, Egberto, to be leaders of that movement, because we could do this. It's a democracy. And I'll close by saying people often point the finger at the 1%. I would say examine the 99%. And why hasn't the 99% been able to do something about the 1%'s moral corruption? We need a new America and a new world, and I look forward to building that with you and all your people who are listening to your show. And I'm honored to be on your show. You're a phenomenal talk show host. I can't wait to see you go nationally.
Thank you so kindly for the kind words. Joel Segal. I always say it wrong. Executive Director of Justice Action Mobilization Network, and a hell of a bass player who can actually do Funkadelic like Funkadelic does it. Thank you so kindly for the interview.
Keep the funk alive.
There you go. All right, folks, I hope you like that. Now we're at the end of the hour, so I got to go real quick to asking you to please remember, do support Politics Done Right. Go to store.politicsdoneright.com. Go to store.politicsdoneright.com. I'm going ahead to add that into the stream. So if you visit that store, anything that you go ahead, oops, I put the wrong thing in there. Anything that you purchase at Politics Done Right goes to help telling the message, goes to help supporting the project goes to help protecting and continuing what we do. Store.politicsdoneright.com. But I tell you what I would really love. I would really love for you to go to Patreon and become real subscribers. That would be going to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Alternatively, you can go to our PayPal and do the same thing at PayPal. That would be a contribution or a series of contributions if you want. That is found at paypal.me/politicsdoneright. Again, that is paypal.me/Politics Done Right. I thank you so kindly for being a part of Politics Done Right. I thank you so kindly for being out here with us today. I know you have places to go. There's a lot of stuff you can go out there and see. That you're with us means that you like what we're doing.